What up? It's Prime Pete. I don't know how I missed this part of the article, but it essentially confirms that skill-based matchmaking is no longer being used in Call of Duty, and that it's something much more complicated and much more manipulative. While I was too busy breaking down them explaining their one-to-one ratio communism-based matchmaking, their avoidance of the questions in the Q&A section, and the matchmaking diagram that was designed to make us think nothing was wrong, it seems I skimmed over a very important part of the article that confirms what a lot of people have been asking about. I've been asked several times a variety of questions regarding SBMM and EOMM, and while it's extremely difficult to put exact names on which system is being used, experiencing how the game plays and seeing how the company handles their public statements about their matchmaking methods is usually a pretty good approach to seeing what kind of matchmaking methods a company is using. I've been asked if EOMM uses SBMM, or if Call of Duty has any form of SBMM whatsoever, and the answer I give is normally something like this. All forms of matchmaking fall under three main categories, all with their own philosophy on player retention. There's connection-based matchmaking, which prioritizes good connection over everything else, and offers a fantastic quality of life for every player and a consistently smooth game experience. Skill-based matchmaking, an algorithm that factors in player skill level in order to offer a perpetually more balanced experience, and engagement-optimized matchmaking, an algorithm that places players into matches that gives them a string of forced match structures, performances, and outcomes to breed player retention and addiction. If you think there's another umbrella I'm forgetting, I'm open to ideas. For an extremely interesting example though, even a game like Clash Royale, which is a AAA mobile game, has extremely complex matchmaking that apparently ensures that you don't win over a certain percentage of your games, at least according to some research I've been doing. Essentially, the point is that if you keep playing, you'll eventually reach the highest rank, but you can't climb too much in one period of time. If your win rate is even slightly above 50%, you'll eventually hit the top rank, just based on math. The way the game works though, each card has a decent hard counter, and the game always keeps track of the deck that you're using, so when the time comes for you to have to lose, the game evaluates the kind of cards you have in your deck, and then throws you into a match with a player that has cards that hard counter yours, making it virtually impossible to win. This form of matchmaking, which restricts your win percentage and also evaluates the cards in your deck, is a form of EOMM, despite it not being the same form of EOMM we see in Call of Duty. It manipulates your results in order to keep you playing for longer, and forces losses on you by not matching you with better players, but rather analyzing what cards you're using and throwing you into a match where you have an incredibly low chance to come out the victor. Technically, if you're trying to climb to the highest rank, you'll have to play up to twice as long than you normally would because of the restrictions put in place on your win rate. Additionally, lots of content is locked behind different ranks, so not only is ranking up an incentive, but you also can't experience the full game unless you rank up. Heck, you can't even reach the highest rank in the game without first clearing all of the initial arenas. The best part is, you start at ground zero and there are no placement matches. That sounds kinda similar to Call of Duty's ranked system, but it's no wonder why Clash Royale is Supercell's most profitable and addictive game. But back to Call of Duty. EOMM would not work if it didn't weigh skill. After all, how would you force a losing game on a really great player unless you were able to evaluate their skill and put them in matches against players even better than them, or with higher kill-death ratios, counteracting playstyles, or other factors that may cause them to lose? Skill is a necessary parameter in an EOMM algorithm. It doesn't mean that it's actually skill-based matchmaking. It just means that it weighs skill. The way they differ is in the results they give you. Matching with consistently similarly skilled opponents seems like it may yield a 50-50 win-loss ratio anyways, which kind of checks out mathematically. EOMM plays the 50-50 game a lot better. Instead of risking you having a fantastic game, braving the odds and destroying a lobby of even players similar to you, it'll just throw you into a match where there is no chance that you possibly win, or whatever magic deems you need to keep you playing the game. But when I get asked, does Call of Duty use skill-based matchmaking at all, I usually use that answer I just gave. No, it most likely doesn't, just based on our observations and the player experience and the evidence. While matches may appear sweaty and may have players that mirror our abilities, EOMM also weighs skill just like SBMM. But now we have the solidifying piece of evidence that can confirm this facet of our EOMM argument. Quote, we often see the community refer to our matchmaking system as skill-based matchmaking. Call of Duty does consider skill, or more specifically player performance, as a component, as do most in the industry, but skill is not the dominant variable. We consider and prioritize several factors to create lobbies. Right out of the gate, we know by now that saying skill is not the dominant variable is clearly painting a false picture with true language, which is classic doublespeak. But as I explained in my last video, this is technically true. Let me explain. If ping and matching time were not the primary variables in matchmaking, it would be an absolute haywire nightmare. Think about it. If good connection wasn't a priority, and you just had to find a match as quickly as possible as soon as you clicked search, you'd be put into a lobby with anyone in your region that clicked search at the same time as you. That means that you could have 300 ping playing with a guy from another faraway country, or 10 ping playing with your next door neighbor, whoever queued up more similarly to you. If COD is forced to only match you as fast as possible, your connection will go out the window. Additionally, if good ping was exclusively the dominant variable and match time was disregarded, the game would not give you a match until every single player in the match had close to or exactly the same ping, which may take a good amount of time. By prioritizing both ping and match time, you're able to get the best of of both worlds. Good connection, but decent matchmaking time as well. The algorithm has two parameters: get them a decent connection and get it as fast as you can. Instead of doing one or the other exclusively, which results in a likely horrible quality of life for the player, connection-based matchmaking does both of these things, and it does them very well. Them saying that skill is not the dominant variable, but that ping and matching time are the dominant variables, is just stating the obvious, and trying to downplay the impact skill actually has on the matchmaking process. Obviously, ping and matching time are the most important. We've just established that without this emphasis, the matchmaking process would be terrible. However, the next most important critical factor to the matchmaking process is considered and used as a filter to determine what matches are not for you, and that factor is obviously skill. However, heading back to the quote, we can confirm that a system that falls under the skill-based matchmaking umbrella is not present in Call of Duty for two main reasons that we derive from this small paragraph. The first reason is that they define skill in the parentheses, or more specifically, player performance. I don't know why they included this, because it really does give away a lot of information that I don't think they want us to know. A player's skill level in any video game consists of a lot of factors. According to the blog post, Call of Duty evaluates skill by observing a player's overall performance, kills, deaths, wins, losses, and more, including mode selection and recent matches as an overall metric across multiplayer experiences. It's a fluid measurement that is consistently updating and reacting to your gameplay. This clearly shows that how skill is perceived in Call of Duty is through a system that is constantly updating and constantly evaluating your performance across each match, and it uses these evaluations to place you into the most suitable matches. You can argue that your skill level is basically how you perform, and this is true. However, we have to paint a complex picture here. It makes sense, but just bear with me for a second. Skill-based matchmaking is not a harmful system if it's done correctly. The Finals is a great example. It's a new game that is open about its usage of SBMM, and it even tells us in patch notes that they crank it up a little just to test its effectiveness every now and again. The only way skill-based matchmaking becomes too harmful is if it's too strict, and if it forces you to play with kids that are only unfathomably close to you in skill level, which makes matches stressful and far too competitive. If skill-based matchmaking is light, like it was in games like Black Ops 2 and OG Fortnite, for example, which still allows you to beat players who are a little worse than you and not have overly competitive matches, and maybe have some fun competition, it's not at all a harmful system, and it may even be better for the ultra casuals who have no idea what they're doing. I personally don't find much wrong with SBMM if it's light enough. I've clearly noticed SBMM in a lot of games that I've played, especially the Finals and Fortnite, but I've never been too annoyed because as long as it's not overbearing, it gives you some nice fun competition while not being boring or stressful. Remember, Activision can't lie in a public statement. That's very illegal. Keep in mind that lawyers helped them write this article. They also took 60 days to come up with these responses, so you can bet that they're very well thought out and precisely phrased. Since SBMM isn't necessarily a bad thing if it's done properly, why did they not confirm that it was there? Why not say that, yes, we match players based on skill, and although it's not prioritized before ping and matching time, it's the next most important factor. The only reason they never confirm using some form of skill-based matchmaking is because they're not using it, and they can't lie and confirm something that isn't true. But Pete, why did they even address this in the first place? They never even had to pull out the term skill-based matchmaking at all. Well, right you are. But there obviously would have been some serious backlash. I'm sure you all know this by now, but if you don't, there was a Reddit Q&A that Sledgehammer put out, and a huge majority of the questions mentioned either SBMM or EOMM, but mainly skill-based matchmaking. However, I saw EOMM actually mentioned by Marksman, who is a popular COD YouTuber, among a few other players. However, the most popular term in that Q&A was SBMM. If they dodged this question in the article, there would have rightfully been some serious backlash, as I said before. If they failed to address it, they would have lost a lot of support from the players who still foolishly defend them after what would have been that much of a blunder. However, the way they address it is extremely vague, and although it's addressed, it's never directly confirmed nor denied. It's danced around, just like the rest of the article does. This section is just their way of making their matchmaking look as good as possible without directly addressing what system they use. This is the most important point to take away from this video, and after considering it, this is what I believe to be a dead giveaway that they're not using SBMM, they're using some form of EOMM. They never confirm nor deny that skill-based matchmaking is used in Call of Duty. They've already shown that they love dancing around the truth, and they do it here once again. They completely avoid actually giving it a yes or no answer. Call of Duty does consider skill, or more specifically player performance, as a component, as do most in the industry, but skill is not the dominant variable. There's no confirmation or denial. This means something huge. And to reiterate, saying it's not the dominant variable is just stating the obvious, and it's doublespeak. I'll repeat myself, if it didn't prioritize ping and matching time, the game would feel even worse. But think about it this way, they can either confirm or deny that they use skill-based matchmaking, right? Well, almost right. They could also just do neither and never directly confirm nor deny it and dance around it like they've done for the entire rest of the article, which they do. But there's an extremely relevant reason why they do it. If they deny that they use SBMM, that leaves only two options, as I discussed earlier, either some form of EOMM or some form of connection-based matchmaking. We know for a fact that it isn't connection-based matchmaking, so if SBMM were denied, it would be pretty obvious that some complex form of matchmaking that falls under the EOMM umbrella would have to be in use, because that's the only option left. If they confirm SBMM, then that throws every single EOMM accusation out the window, proves me wrong, clears their name of being manipulative, and gives the player base plenty of clarity and transparency when it comes to their matchmaking practices, and gives them a solid way to move forward with the player base. Long story short, if they confirm that they use any form of skill-based matchmaking and not EOMM, nothing but positive results will come from it. That would finally be the transparency we need, and it may have even motivated me to play again, seeing as I would have been wrong about the game being manipulated. But it comes as no surprise that they don't confirm it. They choose the middle option, to dance around the answer as they always do. But why do that if nothing but positive results happen from coming clean about using some form of skill-based matchmaking? Well, it's because they can't lie, which clearly is the only reason why they didn't say they used some form of skill-based matchmaking. They simply said that skill, and more specifically player performance, was being considered, which are both huge factors in another algorithm as well, and that algorithm is, you guessed it, EOMM, or some form of it. So they couldn't confirm SBMM because they'd be lying, they couldn't deny it because they'd set themselves up to be found out for using EOMM, so they had to dance around the truth and neither confirm nor deny it to keep us in the dark about what is actually going on. It's as simple as that, and it's not hard to see at all once that is pointed out. Again, there are three categories of matchmaking, which every other method falls under. CBMM, which prioritizes a good connection and ignores everything else. SBMM, which uses skill level to filter out certain matches. And EOMM, which manipulates results to keep players playing the game. We know for a fact that COD doesn't use any form of connection-based matchmaking because we wouldn't be running on 80 ping every other game. So that either leads us to SBMM or EOMM. SBMM is never addressed, but never confirmed or denied for the reasons I just stated, which then leads us to EOMM, which is the elephant in the room, but is the ghost that is never addressed. I got a bonus point if you need even more proof. Quote, does Call of Duty consider player engagement, time played, as a factor in matchmaking? We do not consider how often or how much you play when determining matchmaking. We know that they saw Marksman's comment about EOMM. It was one of the most popular responses within the entire Q&A, and also one of, if not the most trending accusation against COD's integrity, but it fails to be mentioned anywhere in the entire article. We know they saw Marksman mention it, but when they were discussing what to include, despite them knowing the popularity of the argument, they refuse to answer it anywhere but here, and they have to redefine the terms so that they can answer it in the way that they want. That keyword engagement is what players were looking for, and all they got was this. Think about it. They could have and should have been easily able to address these concerns about them using EOMM and be able to deny them flat out. Let's look at this problem from the same angle we looked at the SBMM section from. If they confirm EOMM, their game is finished and everyone will know it's rigged. If they deny it, they clear their name, prove me wrong, validate their game has genuine integrity, and invalidate any accusations against them. But what do? Well, they neither confirm nor deny engagement optimized matchmaking. They instead choose to dance around it once again. They redefine engagement as not a player's interest in the game and their likelihood to keep playing after a certain match outcome, but instead they define it as time played. Now we have to be careful here because this wording is extremely deliberate, and we shouldn't let it slip by. EOMM has to do with extending the amount of time players play the game, so I can see how it ties into the whole time played definition. However, you have to realize that it is not at all what they're saying. They're saying that the matchmaking algorithm does not consider how often you get on the game or how much you play the game in X amount of time when placing you into your matches. In other words, you won't be rewarded or punished for however long you spend playing the game. Everyone is treated the same, which basically just answers nothing once again. If they address maybe that they consider how long your play sessions are when determining matchmaking, maybe that would have covered some ground. But they very specifically worded it this way to not have to touch the concept of extending your play sessions based on matchmaking. They only mention your play habits and the amount of hours you have clocked on the game. This probably got a lot of people, and it sure got me for a little bit. I really had to read into it before I determined that it really doesn't answer anything about EOMM. My main reason for deliberating on this question for so long and really being suspicious of it was because they chose to answer it this way and not address EOMM like they tried to address SBMM. They didn't even touch the terminology at all, and there's a huge reason for it. So there you have it. Call of Duty is stuck in the middle and forced to use semantics, clever phrasing, doublespeak, gaslighting, and other techniques to try to maneuver around how their matchmaking actually functions, and are trying to make it seem like their matchmaking is the best system possible for us, which just indicates even more that they have something to hide, and that something is some form of EOMM. This article, in an attempt to clear their name and hide the truth, actually is the most powerful piece of evidence we have against Activision and Call of Duty's integrity, aside from the player experience. The best part is, I'm still not done yet. Part 6 is coming soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm Prime Pete. Take it easy.